Hello, hello, and welcome to the Midday Show. I'm your host, Kyle Janis. It's time for another episode of Brandlive's bi-weekly web series, all about real conversations with real experts in the world of webinars. And my guest today quite literally brings the wow factor to every webinar they touch. Every episode, we're talking with amazing thought leaders, doers, and makers in the world of webinars right here in the studio. Then, after, stick around for the live Q&A with our special guest immediately following the show. Send us your comments and questions anytime during the show, and stay tuned to get your answers live. Here at the Midday Show, we're on a mission determined to make webinars worth watching once again. We're putting the wonder back into the webinar and changing our collective misconceptions about webinars from boring to bingeable, from can't even stand to can't stop watching. And to change webinars for the better, we need to start at square one and change how they're built from the beginning. It's like when Ben explained Brandlive's step-by-step method for delivering webinars that wow, and how Sam shared in our first episode, before the slide decks and the discussion topics, the FAQs and the firesides. Webinars worth watching start with clear intention. What's the objective we aim to achieve? The emotion we want to convey? The story we have to tell? When we approach webinars with intention, it becomes more about a script than slides. It's more about mood than just message. And joining me in the studio today, my guest is no stranger to storytelling. Leading the creative team at Brandlive Studios, responsible for compelling visual narratives to webinars and events around the globe. It is my pleasure to introduce Brandlive's Executive Creative Director and SVP of Brandlive Studios, Saira Mathew. Saira, thank you so much for joining us on the Midday Show.
Thank you so much, Kyle, for having me.
Before we dive in, I just want to say, as the literally creative director for the Midday Show, thank you for making this show look so good.
You're very welcome. I'm glad it looks good.
We've gotten great feedback, and I certainly, as the one who sits in this chair every other week, am just really grateful. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Also, I feel like we have to acknowledge to all of the viewers out there that our very well coordinated to the set outfits were not pre-planned, but I do appreciate it.
Well, I guess your wardrobe spoke to my wardrobe.
My people called your people.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely right.
That's how we roll.
Well, again, thanks for joining us. As SVP of Brandlive Studios, I'm hoping that you can help me clarify something. On one hand, Brandlive is an all-indomitable webinar software product, and yet there's also this tandem team of creative experts that you lead. What is the contrast and congruency with Brandlive and Brandlive Studios?
So Brandlive, at its very core, is all about delivering the most innovative platform for webinars and virtual events. Brandlive Studios is the little creative heartbeat for that platform. So Brandlive platform lays out the canvas. We bring in the paint and make our clients' events and shows as visually compelling as possible.
But this is by far not your first time running a team of creatives. From your LinkedIn, it shows an impressive history of creative leadership, mostly focused in the field of animation. Mm-hmm. That seems like such a fascinating field. What first drew you into creative animation?
So I did my undergrad in computer science and engineering a long time ago. So by the time I got to the fourth year, I had no idea what I was going to do with an engineering degree. And I had to do my thesis project. So my project mates and I decided to take on the challenge of this computer graphics project. And it was kind of newish for us to do that. So we coded something that created geometric shapes, and it moved across the screen and did all kinds of fancy blinky things. It was terrible, but it was a visual tangible output. And also around that time, Jurassic Park had just come out, and I'd seen it in this dinky little theater in India, and that blew my mind. I then started connecting the dots between tech and art, and kind of then found purpose and said, okay, this is my lane.
That is amazing. Most notably in your career, you were on the production team for the Netflix full-length animated feature film, The Monkey King. What was it like working on a major motion picture for one of the most popular streaming services?
Working for Netflix Animation Studios, which is under the umbrella of Netflix, I never really felt like I was working for a streaming service company. That was kind of happening in the background. Felt like we were working for a large startup of creatives and filmmakers. All we did do was talk about films and how we're going to make this thing happen.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But I will say, I know personal bias here, but I'm so excited that we now have you here at Brandlive guiding our creative team, helping some of the biggest companies around the globe to capture audiences and to tell the most compelling stories. How do those past experiences translate to the work that you're doing here at Brandlive?
I suppose it all comes down to storytelling, doesn't it? Whether you work in movies or ads or webinars at Brandlive, you're telling a story and you're trying to you have the same goal, which is to captivate the audience. So I guess my experience in animation and filmmaking and the people I was fortunate to surround myself with, I learned to tell narratives in a visually compelling way. It's about making the audience, getting stories to not just be seen, or your content not just to be seen, but also to be felt. That so to give the audience that experience is important.
Totally.
It's not just visuals, it's not just the narrative, you actually feel it.
Oh, I can't just like present to my slide deck. But I love that. And I think as an audience member, that consideration, you can tell. Question for you, for our webinar heroes out there, can you walk us through how you go about calling out that core story of a client project in ways that informs the creative decisions that follow?
I would engage the clients in several conversations to understand what it is that they are wanting to deliver in this event, and then tease out of them their intention, perhaps even advising them on the narrative of their ROS and the arc in their show, rather than it just being like a checklist of departmental topics.
I just assume stories to be largely narrative-based. How important are the visual elements to that overall narrative?
But visuals are by no means is not a substitute for the spoken or the written narrative. It's just there it's there to enhance the story. It's there to bring in the emotion, evoke that feeling. So that's the role of visuals. But how it pertains to it in the webinar world, the visuals will help you make a really good first impression. First impressions matter. You lock in the audience during that. You then shepherd the focus of the audience from one segment to another and along the arc of the story. And then you give them a sense of belonging with the brand identity and like doing a cohesive branding and the company core values and all of that. So the audience has a sense of belonging. And then lastly, I guess it's absorbing all of that complex information that comes with all the talking heads wanting to say so much, but you can't absorb all of that, and you can do it with some visuals in motion or with overlays and various ways to help the speaker's content be understood better in slide decks that are animated.
What is that next step? Once we've established the core story, how do you go about deciding that visual direction and the techniques that you're going to use in your process?
So this is the fun part, right, where we get to start making things. And so I love this part. We've got the story locked in, hopefully. We've got the intention kind of worked out with the clients or whomever. And so now it is more about wanting to understand what you want to leave your audience with. What's that feeling you want to leave your audience with? So this could be anything from textures, fonts, colors, shape languages, characters, expressions, lighting, and let's not forget music. You do this for a bit till you hone in on 2 or 3 concepts. You thumbnail storyboards if the motion needs that. And then you work out the creative approach to producing the work. What medium would be best suited to actually create the work. It could be crayon doodles to stop, to motion graphics, to character animation, VFX, or even AI generated stuff, dare I say.
For the webinar heroes out there who are looking to level up their own visual impact, Let's get into the weeds
Yeah.
a bit. Walk me through a repeatable process that they could use to develop their own visual direction for their next show.
I would ask clients or anybody who's trying to put on their own show to ask themselves these questions like, what is your intention that we've established is really important to understand or identify? Who is your audience, and what is the impact that you want, that you hope to have on them, right? And then what is the kind of vibe and tone you want to create? So that will come with a theme. All the rest will just start falling into place once you have these three questions kind of answered, and then you have your run of show to help you guide the rest of it, keeping those three factors in mind.
Just personal curiosity, and genuinely so. How do you go about getting to that theme? Like, if I come forward with an intention, like I have this talk show that I'd like to do to highlight experts here in the world of webinars, and that's what I bring to BLS. How then do you go into theme and feeling from just kind of that very introductory statement?
For one, it has to be uplifting and engaging. It can't be a downer. It has to resonate with your audience. So it shouldn't be all about your personal taste or your personal preference at that point, or that cultural moment that you're going through. You kind of have to speak to your larger community that you're part of. So what is that theme that would speak to everybody? I think that makes for a successful theme.
Well, and that definitely ties into the second point of who your audience is,
Yeah,
and then that then
exactly.
guides the theme. That absolutely makes sense. And
And also what the content of that particular show is. Like if there's something in there that could be thematic, but really is the vibe of that moment that you can then add it to your content.
So once we have the overall visual direction clarified, how do you apply that to the visual experience? How does that translate?
I mean, we smatter it everywhere. We like put our visual pixels everywhere. We throw pixel dust everywhere, literally, not pixie dust, pixel dust. So it's like in the form of, it's in the registration pages, it's in the email, and in the show itself, in the intro video, the segment cards, the walk-up cards, any of the marketing content that you might have in there. Everything will have a little bit of that thematic look and feel.
Yeah.
And yeah, and even in your post-production, we would add that for the video on demand.
So really creating an entire experience from every interaction
Yeah.
point.
It's like a visual package that we would put on a show.
Totally.
Yeah. The little bow. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So, sorry, this has been amazing. Thank you for offering kind of how to take, for folks who aren't creative, kind of that first dip into that creative arena. But we can't have the creative director of Brandlive Studios here in our studio without giving you a chance for a little show and tell of some of the amazing creative work that you have done. So, Saira, by all means, show up. What have you, like, do you have any fun things to share?
I mean, of course I do, and of course I came prepared. I have a sizzle reel to share.
Oh.
Let's play that.
Però, catenazzo che donna sei, io le inchiodo contro il muro con un'aria da mandrillo. I miei soli souvenir sono rossetti e tacchi a spillo. Le castane le consumo solamente a colazione e le rosse le rifiuto, ne ho già fatto indigestioni. Quando sono di 3/4 le regalo a qualche amico, se decido per più tardi le conservo dentro il frigo. Ho deciso, adesso è fatta, con quegli occhi lì da gatta nel mio letto ci scommetto fili come un vaporetto. Perciò bambina, se sono qui per te stasera è una fortuna.
Sospetto amore non ne ha, ti propongo un gioco dura
catenazzo, che donna sei. Balli come un diavoletto, ballo anch'io, tutto perfetto. Mentre il cuore nel mio petto mi sfarfalla e mi va stretto. Non capisco che succede, sono confuso ma sincero. Io ti guardo all'improvviso, mi innamoro per davvero. Per Giuseppe ti prego, ascolta quello che ti ho detto. Nel mio cuore tutto a un tratto c'è un amore maledetto. Sul mio letto di gerani, di profumo non ce n'è. Io per questo cerco un fiore come fiore, ho scelto te. Perciò bambino, se tu sei qui per me stasera, beh sì.
Wow, truly amazing. As well, Saira, amazing to have you here in the studio.
Thank
you
you.
so much for joining us on the
Thank you.
Midday Show today. It has been so much fun.
As it has been for me.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Saira, before we wrap, we do ask every guest to take the hot seat. 5 rapid-fire questions. Are you down?
5, okay.
Okay, here we go.
All right, let's do this.
Question number 1. You have a ton of past experience leading creative animation teams across various media. Strictly talking to visual experience, what is one of the best animated films in terms of execution, in your opinion?
Kyle, this is an impossible question to answer. I mean, there's just far too many. And I mean, it depends, execution, it depends on what time periods of Fantasia, for example, great movie. And for its time, it did cell animation choreographed to symphony music, and special effects was new at the time, so there was that. It was mind-blowing. And Studio Ghibli's Princess Mononoke, have you seen that? Brad Bird's The Iron Giant, where there was integration of CGI and hand-drawn for the first time, that done in a big scale. And spline animation was new, as was real-time rendering for lighting and shadows. That was groundbreaking for us at that time. So again, it all depends on when this all came out. Of course, Star Wars for its time, amazing. Control camera systems, advanced, the miniature models thing, the optical effects, all of that, mind-blowing. Sound design, that was a whole other bar that they raised. And then there's, of course, Jurassic Park, which was inspiration for me to also get into animation. And Toy Story was the first time CGI stories were, CGI storytelling it was a big benchmark in CGI storytelling. And then there's so many others. Starship Troopers, my favorite, for doing swarms. And that was new, being able to handle that kind of swarms. I could go on and on and on and on, but there's Spider-Verse, and there is Loving Vincent, which nobody watched, but I think there were 125 artists who hand oil painted every single frame, and there were 65,000 frames all strung up together to make this movie. Was the movie impactful? I don't know, but it was a massive feat and was beautiful.
I mean, naive of me to expect a simple answer from someone so well-versed in the animated world, but I really love the perspective you take to your answer of these really big movements in technology and development. Phenomenal. Number 2, as creative director on countless shows, do you have a favorite project either by its visual execution or the creative process involved?
Yeah, I do. I really enjoyed working on ArcInvest In the Know, American Cancer Society's project. We did a web series for them. AARP's mental health project. All of these are narrative-driven stories. One, Datavand had some great storytelling too in there with their marketing video, and their fireside chat and all of that was really fun to work on. So these were the projects that had a little more narrative elements to it. I would say American Cancer Society was my favorite because it had a lot of meaning to me personally, and the feedback we got from the client was what I talked about earlier, where our work was not just seen, it was actually felt, and the host was just really loving how it all came together. So that was wonderful for me.
Ever the storyteller. Number 3, as AI gets ever more powerful, how are you seeing it applied now, and what are your predictions for future impact on creative possibilities?
I think AI is just another tool in our creative arsenal. I do not, if used carefully with intention and process, it can be quite a powerful assist, but it's not a replacement to a lot of things that we do. It is a really good, powerful assist. And it's getting better and better every month. But my prediction for AI, it's my crystal ball, is that there will be exponential rise in the amount of generated AI content that you will see. And it's just going to be kind of grossly out there, but people will want to see quality over the sheer quantity and the need to have it done immediately. So that will come around. It's like any technology that hits creative world. It always comes back to really wanting quality, not just, I have this tool and I'm going to use it.
Quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense.
Purpose and intention.
Why, it sounds similar to what we've been talking about here at the Midday Show.
And what I keep
plugging. Number 4. What is the title of your next webinar series that would have audiences binging all the way through?
Maybe a suspenseful kind of a webinar series, and would be called Beyond the Last Slide.
Ooh, the title alone, I'm already in.
Yeah, so you get the secret sauce to life in the very last episode of the series, the very last segment, and the very last slide of that segment. I will reveal the secret sauce of life.
I have to
Cliffhanger after cliffhanger.
So I just have to watch everything to finally learn what life's
That's
about?
right.
You and my favorite serial television show. Next on Lost. No, I'm kidding. Okay, finally, last question. We ask every guest, if you could rebrand webinars, what would be the new IT name we're calling them?
I don't love, fundamentally, I don't like combo words like, what is webinar? Web-based seminars equals webinar. I don't hate the word, I got very used to it. I mean, I actually don't hate it at all, but since you're asking, and I'm empowered as a queen on the Tower of Babel.
Special guest.
I think we have to dive in a little deeper to, or a little wider rather, to the whole global languages that we have at our disposal.
Yeah.
And find that unique word. So I learned this word recently, nakama, and I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. It's a Japanese word that means community experience. I think that would make for a good name.
I love that.
So
Like, just got goosebumps, not even kidding. I love that.
Are you going to change everything now?
Yeah, this would be the Nakama show. Because we're just bringing community together here.
Yeah.
And speaking of bringing community together, Saira, thank you so much. But also, thank you, everyone out there, for watching today's show. Right after, please stick around and make sure you get your questions and comments in. Saira and I will see you in the live Q&A coming up next. Saira, oh my gosh, thank you so much. That was such a fun episode. Thank you so much for coming to the studio and being a part of the Midday Show with us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Really appreciated the opportunity to get into the insight into the creative process, and especially self-identified as someone who is not necessarily creative inclined, to kind of understand more of your approach. And making it seem really simple, just a process of exploratory questions that then really guide that initial stage of getting into then what becomes that creative expression. Really appreciate it. And we got some really great questions from some of the folks in the audience today. Without further ado, let's dive on in. Our first one comes from Greg. Greg asks, where do you like to source inspiration for your show designs?
From the clients, firstly. I would try to get first inspiration from them, and then I help them find inspiration. Perhaps then I would be working with the artist real time to sketch out ideas that then sparks the search for references. And then artist websites, social posts in the designer communities, and then Pinterest, AI concepting as well. So yeah, all of those are resources to get inspiration from. And of course, movies and whatever we see.
I've definitely enjoyed watching as you assemble like a mood board as you're collecting all these inspiration pieces, and just see all of this breadth of material that then comes in to really inform and then evolve into what will become the show's creative theme. I guess really inspiration comes anywhere. But okay, moving on. Helena asks, how do you decide on a theme that speaks to everybody?
A theme. Okay, so again, this is if it's collaborating with a client and the stakeholders. So that everybody in this question is perhaps the audience for that particular event. We can't possibly have a theme that speaks to everybody, but for that event. So yeah, collaborating with the stakeholders, spending the time to understand their core messaging, their purpose, and that word intention of their show. So if they have that purpose and intention, it should speak to everybody in their target audience that is watching. Then I look for trends and art or cultural moments or cultural stuff that resonates with the show purpose, and look into themes that align with social conversations and emotional tones that might be needed for that particular event.
Sounds very similar to kind of the process with the last question of coming into the inspiration for the show design is really kind of once we start with that intention and we really have our purpose and our goal, kind of looking to the greater kind of conversation that the world is having and what's resonating with the message that we want to give.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There you go. Once again, inspiration everywhere. Marcos asks, how can I get that polished look even if I don't have designers on my team?
You can't. You need to hire a creative studio. You need to, for a polished look, or you need to hire some designers who can help you, unless you are a designer yourself.
Are there any kind of for folks who like myself, like I barely can color inside the lines? What are some initial ways of like kind of building that design, that creative muscle? I've got the interest, but maybe not the skill. This is me personally, really.
The question was more of a polished look. That's why my answer was cheeky. But if you're just looking to start off concepting a design, I would say start with a pencil and paper, sketch out things that you're thinking about, and then of course put together a mood board that can be digital. Everyone has access to a mood board. You might not source exactly the right things, but you have your inspiration, and then sketch. Then you'll get to be a better designer.
That reminds me of a quote I love from Salvador Dali that says, if a voice within you says, I cannot paint, then by all means paint, and that voice will be gone. So I like just dive in and I don't know, kind of getting into the sandbox. Play. We got one more really good question. This one comes from Ahmed, who asked about the event services that BLS offers. Just clarifying, what is it that BLS does and can do?
So we can do branding, visuals for site build, show builds, set design and build, segment content pre-records of various different styles, marketing videos. But largely we can create anything that's visual in any particular style that suits your brand. It really depends again on the event, but that's kind of the big categories we cover.
But I'm hearing it's not only amazing creative, amazing visuals, amazing design and brand, but there's on-site services helping to support for those events that live in both worlds of it on the interwebs as well as in person. So you're running the gamut there at BLS, it sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. And also we do help, I forgot to mention, the ROS planning, the run of show planning, and strategizing what the show should feel like, as well as helping with scripts. And like you mentioned, some of the on-site services as well to make shows happen.
So really just the jack of all trades, or rather the Jacqueline of all trades.
Sure.
I love it. Well, Saira, those were the great questions that we got. And again, thank you so much for just a really fun episode. It was such a pleasure having you on the Midday Show.
Thank you. It was really fun for me too. Thanks.
Oh, gosh, yeah. And thank you all for watching. Join us on January 28th, where we have Brandlive product manager Eli Ackerman in the studio giving us our first look at Green Room. Until then, Saira, thanks again, and everyone be well.
Take care. Bye.